Welcome to our first ever TriIt virtual cooking class presented by the Triton College Alumni Association in partnership with the Hospitality Department. I am Jamie DiPaolo, president of the Triton College Alumni Association, and we're honored to have tonight's class hosted by international award-winning chef, alumna, and faculty member, Chef Carolina Diaz. We look forward to connecting with you over the course of the evening. This evening's event arose from a spirit of collaboration and togetherness amid a time of social distance. And while we may not be able to be together physically, we believe it is important to remain engaged socially. A number of Triton programs united to make this event possible. Our own Triton students from various programs curated the items many of you received for this evening's event. Our culinary program was heavily involved in the creation of this production. The assortment of chocolates included in the executive chef level were made by our hospitality students in Chef Clem's HIA 129 chocolate class, putting their creativity and skills into practice. The chocolate chip sea salt cookies are made special by Triton Hospitality faculty member and Alumni Association council member, Chef Manny Uribe. The HIA 277 catering class modified their service learning during our new environment by working behind the scenes to package and assemble the gift bags many of you received. Our hospitality students are also displayed in the student cookbook included in both executive and sous chef levels. The custom reusable wooden boxes that those of you at the executive chef level received were designed and crafted by students in our engineering technology program, utilizing 3D software for modeling and laser cut and etch on our made in the USA Epilogue laser machine. Our visual communication graphic design students competed for an opportunity to have their designs chosen for the wine and chocolate box labels. Students were given specified dimensions, images, and instruction, and were encouraged to showcase their talents. Through a generous donation from Barilla, the 3 different pastas and 2 types of sauces included in the executive chef and sous chef levels are a prominent feature in this evening's main dish and allowed us to redirect funds to student scholarships. At this time, I would like to acknowledge our gracious participants who have made this evening possible. Proceeds raised from the event will support the Triton College Alumni Legacy Scholarship and help Triton College students in achieving their goals. On behalf of the Alumni Association and our ultimate beneficiaries, our students, I thank you.
The Triton College Alumni Association would like to thank our generous sponsors who made tonight's event possible.
I'm extremely elated to read a little bit about our chef tonight. This new North Lake, Illinois native, Chef Diaz, traveled to Milan, Italy to compete for 2 days against a group of 15 chefs from around the world in the Barilla World Pasta Championship in 2018. Chef Diaz not only earned the top award, the Barilla International Master of Pasta, her signature dish, which was spaghetti al pomodoro, pardon me, but she was also the first woman to do so. The Triton College alumni is a culinary department director and a proud member of our staff. She is the head chef at Terza Piano Restaurant, located inside the Art Institute of Chicago. And to learn more about Chef Diaz and her passion for cooking, we would love for you to visit www.barilla.com and look up the information, and we'll make sure that we provide a link to that in the chat. And so with that, Chef Diaz, thank you so much. She's accompanied by Chef Manny Uribe, and so we thank you so much for you both being here with us to just help us navigate this amazing TriIt virtual cooking class.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm joined, of course, by Chef Manny Uribe, and together we will be joining, everybody that's on screen right now that'll be cooking with us to provide you guys the answer to a very commonly asked question: what are we cooking tonight for dinner? So we'll start from scratch making pasta, which is not very familiar to some people. And if you're not familiar with the process or comfortable, you can easily buy store-bought pasta to kind of cook along with us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first step, Chef Manny Uribe is going to teach you guys how to make pasta from scratch.
All right, so in many of the packets we included a kit that's ready to go. All you needed was a couple eggs, some olive oil, and some water if as needed. So we're going to start off with the package, making some dough. So what are we making tonight?
That's the million-dollar question.
I feel like everyone struggles with that, right? Even as professionals, we go home after a long, busy day. Sometimes you don't have enough time to make a great meal, or you just don't know what to do. So it's a great vessel. All right, so what we're going to start off doing is we're going to get the flour that's mixed with the semolina already, and we're going to create a well. So once we create this well, we're going to start incorporating your eggs. All right, so this is important. You want to make sure your well is actually high enough on all sides. It's even. It's around the size of the fork. All right, if you make this too small, it's going to be a little bit hard to mix the egg yolks and everything else that's in here with the flour, and it might spill over. So try to avoid that, or else it's going to be a big mess. But another thing too we do with this is it's supposed to be fun. So I love doing this with my daughters. Whenever there's time, we definitely try to do something together, and they love it because it's like working with Play-Doh. So we're going to start off with egg yolks. We're going to do 4 egg yolks in here. So we're going to start off with that. We start to crack it. Have a separate bowl for your egg whites, because you can always use those later on. Put your eggshells aside. Anyone that's growing any herbs outside their house, it's great for the garden. All right. So we have our 4 egg yolks. All right. Now, the beautiful thing about making pasta dough is that if you don't have the exact amount of eggs or the exact amount of the flour you're doing, is you can always modify it. It's one of those things where as much as we want to go off the recipe, it goes by feel. So the more you make this, the easier it's going to be to know what it is you're going to modify. All right, so we have our eggs cracked into our bowl, which is our flour. We're going to poke the egg yolks to break them. You can easily do this in a separate bowl and then just put the mixed version in here, but this makes it more fun. You're going to take your fork. After you break the egg yolks, you're going to start mixing the egg yolks. All right, working your way around. Little by little, it's incorporating some of the flour off of the walls. So it's going to start to thicken up. Now at this point, once I broke it, I'm going to add my fat, which is your olive oil. All right, so once you do the base recipe, you can modify it by, if you want to change it, say you have some leftover spinach, you can puree that up, incorporate it into here, so now you have this bright green spinach dough. Beets are another great thing to add as well. All right, so I just, great color. What was it, the competition? When we first did the competition, we did it off of black pasta dough, right?
We did. So we actually went together to Milan, Italy to compete in the Barilla World Pasta Championship, and it was quite an experience. We were able to compete using some of the techniques that we actually cooked with in Chicago, and one of them was tainting pasta dough with squid ink. It adds a very natural sea flavor, saltiness to the pasta itself, and it made the pasta completely black, which is really, really cool. So that was an extra little winning.
Yeah, it's a little dramatic. The whole
Yeah,
black pasta, it's a little
exactly.
scary at first if you've never had it. And then we incorporate with a little raw tuna, which is amazing, with red pepper sauce. So at this point, I'm gonna add some of my water, all right? I like to add water as I go. If you add all of it, you might need to add more flour at the end. So I like to add a little bit of that. Just be careful with the water content that you end up putting if you end up adding different items, like the squid ink or like your spinach dough. You know, you want to remove as much water as possible, right? You can start seeing this is starting to thicken up.
I have a question.
Yes.
So after you make this pasta dough, how long can you keep it for? Obviously, this is going to make you quite a bit of pasta dough, and I might not use it all in one night. So what can I do to help this last maybe the whole week?
So after you make the dough, you want to plan ahead for this one. This is definitely something, one of the things where if you know you're going to have a couple hours to spend, shape it. Once you have it all shaped out, then you can freeze it. So little trick, a lot of restaurants do this because they have such a large volume. When they make pasta dough, you can still have your fresh pasta dough, shape it to what you need, dust it with some flour, and then pop it in the freezer. You just have to be careful on stacking it on top of each other, or else it will, you know, not be good for you. So what would you say, like 3 months? You don't want to let this go more than a month. If you don't make too much, give some to your neighbors. All right, so it's getting pretty thick. I'm gonna use a bench scraper. You don't have to have a bench scraper. You can use your hands, right? At this point, it's like working with Play-Doh. It reminds you of when you were a kid. So you have your flour. I'm incorporating the flour into the egg mixture. Careful not to make a huge mess. As much as I try to not make a huge mess, especially when I'm doing this with the girls, it happens. But it's flour, you know what you're getting into. So it's fun.
And I gotta say, as much as it seems like it's a big task to make fresh pasta dough, as you can see this whole time, we've kind of just, you know, you take it easy, kind of incorporate all the ingredients together, and it's not overwhelming as you might think it is. And a very important thing to do is if you are prepping, you know, if you're very busy, like everybody is, and, you know, in these times where you might have your kids at home, you don't have time to prepare a meal every night, and you don't necessarily want to order out. It's good to pick a Sunday or a Monday or a day where you're just relaxing to kind of get some meal prep done. And I would say making this pasta dough is part of that meal prep.
Yeah, I think you forgot the most important part though, is that glass of wine that's pairing with, you know, as you're making the pasta dough. And
I heard it makes the pasta come out better.
Yeah, I think so too. It's proven somewhere. So I'm putting all the pasta dough together, and it's going to be something you do by feel. So, you know, as long as you have washed hands, right? It's hard to do this with gloves because you need to feel the dough. It's still pretty wet, even though it still looks a little dry. All right, so my goal is to incorporate as much flour as possible, and then little by little, I'm going to incorporate some water in here. So what I'm going to do is start kneading it. So I'm applying pressure, turning it, applying pressure, turning it, so that way everything that's inside is coming out, and I'm incorporating some of this flour. So as you're doing this, you want to make sure you get as much flour from the sides, because you don't want it to clump up. Because as soon as it starts to dry, it'll start to crack your dough if you use it later on. So you have your dough. All right, I still have all this water left. I'm adding a little bit as you go. There might be some flour left from your recipe, and I like to have that for dusting later on if you can't incorporate all of it.
What is the end goal? What do you want your pasta dough to feel like?
I keep going back to Play-Doh. I feel like it's one of those things where you push and it has to push back, right? You're producing the gluten. So
what do I do if I've added too much water and now it's, you know, very, very soft?
So then that's where you want to have more flour. So as you have the flour, you incorporate more, you know, just the same thing. If it feels too dry, incorporate more water, a little bit at a time, because it will come together. And then, you know, you can do this in the mixer, and it's going to take about 30 minutes. But it's not the same. You're not going through that experience. You're not going to know if you overdid it.
It's good for distressing?
Yeah, it's good for distressing, especially that bottle of wine or glass of wine. What is the rule?
Bottle.
Bottle? Okay.
So Chef Manny, I have a question for you.
Talk to me, Lorenzo.
So as I'm looking at this, I always think of myself as being able to make mistakes all over the place. What are some of your tips to ensure just a positive experience with the dough?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where you can add all the liquid at once and it might be too wet, or I guess to control the pasta dough to kind of avoid mistakes.
Definitely, because it seems as if, at some point you don't want to make that mistake or you get concerned, but you're natural with it.
You can continue to make a mistake until it gets to a point where you actually shape the dough. Because you can always add more flour or you can add more liquid, right? As long as you already have those ingredients, right? You're going by feel. Once the dough itself is already made, you just want to make sure your surface gets cleaned out. And you might want to have to do this. It's going to keep pushing back on you.
I have a question. Why are you sweating as you're kneading the pasta?
Can everyone see this fucking?
I do.
He's
You know what?
he's
It's called glistening.
I do gotta say, it requires a bit of muscle. And what you wanna do is you wanna make sure that you knead it enough where you get a smooth surface. If you can hold it up right now, you got these like little dimplings in there, and that's kind of not what you want. You wanna keep kneading it until it's completely smooth.
Yeah,
So-
you're bringing everything that's inside out, right? Now I'm starting to form it. So I'm gonna remove all the flour that's in here. And I'll use it for dusting later on. Okay, you can always strain this through chinois or just any strainer you have at home. Ideally, if you have a wooden countertop or a wooden board, try to do it in there.
How long do you say you would have to knead your pasta dough to get a smooth finish?
So if you really want to go fast, it would be like 5 minutes. But you can't really put a time on it because you want to make sure it's ready and good to go. But if you feel that it needs a little bit more water, I just apply it to my hands, to my palm, and then I keep mixing that. All right,
So Manny, question.
Yes.
So with that in your hand, how much pasta can you make with that you just did there?
So you want to be careful on the size that you do. This will end up feeding 4 to 6 people. If you're doing this at a restaurant, you don't want to do too much because then it does get really hard to get a nice size shape, well-rounded, without it actually having like clumps of flour in between. So you're better off doing multiple pieces unless you're using a mixer,
Gotcha.
right? You have more control. I know I saw a question, someone asking like about grams. So that's another thing too, is once you figure out an exact recipe, when you're doing it at a restaurant, it's very important because you want to have consistency. So if you have a new person coming in and then they're following the recipe and it says cups, a lot of times that may be a little bit inconsistent because they may put a little bit too much and then they put it in there and it does affect your product, your finished goal. So what you're looking for is you want it to push back so it still has some way to go. All right, you're producing the gluten, you're just kneading it. Definitely a good workout. This is where the glass of wine comes in.
So you don't feel the pain?
Yeah, so you don't feel the pain.
But you just kind of feel the burn. You did get a question, chefs. It says, this is coming from Penny. She mentioned she's a proud Triton alum, and then she says, what is
Hey,
the
Penny.
proper way to store the dough in the freezer? How long can you freeze it?
I wouldn't freeze it. I would try to use it as soon as you can, right? That's with anything. Why make something and then let it sit there for 6 months? So if you need to let it sit in the freezer, I would say 3 months if it's done well. But with the problem with a lot of home cooks is that you're limited with space in the freezer because then you have different things and then you just put it on top. And if you're stacking up multiple things, you might break it. So just be careful. You want to have a nice thin layer. Unless you have a walk-in freezer, it's going to be a little bit harder. So, all right, it's getting a little bit smoother. I'm pushing down, it's pushing back. So I'm going to let it rest and then work on the rest of the ingredients.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and shift a little bit to making the dish. while Manny starts rolling the pasta dough. We're going to start off with some veggies that are in season right now. We have curly kale. We have a little bit of butternut squash as our main ingredients. So we're going to follow Barilla. Barilla.com has amazing recipe pasta builders that you can kind of take step by step into prepping your meals. And they're really easy to follow, really easy to make meals. By the time your pasta's done cooking, your whole dish is done. And they have 22 plus recipe builders that you can choose of, all representing a different global cuisine. So this one we're going to do just a Midwest version of the recipe pasta builder. It's things that we have in hand. So pretty much what we want to do is just pick any ingredients that you have in your pantry, that you have in your refrigerator, and you want to make cooking easy, fun, and still healthy. So we're going to go ahead and peel our butternut squash. The butternut squash is a little hard to cut and to peel. I went ahead and peeled it already, and we just want to cut it down into cubes. We want to go ahead and take all the seeds out that are inside, and you can easily just use a spoon for this. Again, like Chef Manny said, we're saving, I know he has a garden, we're saving all of the scraps to kind of compost. You want to add these back into the soil, especially now that, you know, things are going dormant. This will help the soil be nice and ready for next year. Just want to scoop out all of the seeds, all of the pulp that's in the middle. And now my butternut squash is ready to cut. So I'm going to set this aside. And you can also set the seeds aside, blanch them off, and then roast them as a garnish for this dish as well. So a nice cube size that I have some already here just to show you guys. This should be plenty. I went ahead and I prepared my kale also. So this kale you can buy at the grocery store and just kind of take off of the stem. So you just want to pull it off and just tear it as you go along. There we go.
So I'm going to start rolling out the dough.
And as you guys are rolling that out, Chef, you got a question?
Yes.
We're going to call on Sophia.
So real quick, before you do that. So,
Yep, you guys do your thing, and then they're going to ask their question,
Okay.
and I'll throw it over to you.
so the magic of TV, we have ready to go pasta dough. It's been resting for about 2 hours. It's one of those things where if you know you're going to be busy, you can do it the day ahead of time. Just make sure you wrap it up in plastic so it's airtight, so it doesn't start oxidizing on you or creating a skin. But when you let it rest, it's going to relax. So then the gluten is not going to be as strong, so we just need to add a little bit of flour, dust your surface, and then knead it for a little bit so that way it works again, and then we're going to cut a piece of that off. And then back to you, Lorenzo.
All righty. So, Sophia, we want to open it up for you to ask your question.
What's your favorite pasta?
She wanted to know what the chef's favorite pastas are.
And can you say it one more time?
Sure. She wanted to know what the chef's favorite pastas were. What types of pasta?
So Sophia, Jessica's daughter, had asked, what's your favorite kind of pasta?
Hi, Sophia. I'm so happy you're joining us. So happy that you get to watch us cook, and hopefully you're cooking along. My favorite pasta is actually angel hair. I like the texture of angel hair, and I like how you can pair it with very simple red sauce, and that's a complete meal. What's your favorite?
I don't know. I want to say lasagna, right? Because that's the first thing that I started using as a kid. Like when we started cooking, like I started doing very different variations of lasagna. But I would have to say rigatoni. It looks pretty cool. It takes up a lot of space. You can also fill it. So what I did right now is I just cut a piece of that off, and we're going to start rolling it. So we're going to try to get it thin, and we have the luxury of having a attachment. So we have this KitchenAid. Most of you have a KitchenAid already at home. They sell these attachments, which is pasta sheet roller. So it's a great tool to have. You want to do a little bit as you go. You don't want to do too much because then it's going to start to dry. And then with the rolling pin, you work in the center, work your way out. All right, so then that way you try to get it, you need to get it pretty thin because you can't shove just a bunch of pasta dough in there and expect it to come out nice and thin. So you have to do some of the work. The machine will let you finish. So you want to make sure you get an even, thinned out piece. If you see that it's getting too wet or that it's getting too dry, incorporate a little bit of water. If you see that it's pushing back on you too much, it's because you need to let it rest a little longer. Because a lot of times you might be in a hurry and you're like, you know what, I'll just not listen to the 2 hours that we have to let it rest. I'll start rolling it out and it comes back. So you wanna let it do its thing, let it rest. If you are in a hurry, there's great pasta products that Barilla has, so that's great. You can use that. But when you do have time, definitely do this.
All right, so in my pan, you always want to start with your base oil. Today we're using extra virgin olive oil, which is my favorite. You can always use walnut oil, grapeseed oil. These are very flavorful oils that are healthy as well and add good flavor to your pasta. After that, you want to choose your base flavoring. So you can use garlic, shallots, onions, any base flavor that you could build upon. I have that going, and immediately I can see my garlic starts getting translucent and white. And then I can go ahead and add my butternut squash to it. I want to show you guys exactly what it looks like. The butternut squash is starting to get a little bit soft, kind of cooking in that oil. And then what we're looking for is for it to start to get a little bit brown. That's how you know it's cooked all the way through.
Oh, we have another question for you, Chef.
Yes.
Go ahead.
What got you interested in cooking?
So we have a question, and I would say, is this Sophia?
Say who it is.
It's Allie.
Allie, ask your question one more time for us.
What got you interested in cooking?
So here's the question. It says, what sparked your interest in cooking?
Hi, thank you for your question. My interest in cooking came from, I think, my large family. My mom had her own business growing up, so she was gone a lot of the time. My dad worked a lot as well. And it kind of fell on me and my older sister to cook for the rest of our siblings. So, you know, it almost came like second nature to us. So I think that's where I started to like preparing meals and feeding people and making them feel comfortable.
Awesome. And that
I think it
question
falls on
came
everyone,
from Allie.
right? That responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right.
So my butternut squash is getting nice and soft. It's picking up some color because the butternut squash has natural sugars in it, and those sugars are starting to caramelize a little bit. So to this, I'm going to add my kale that I've already pulled apart. And the kale will wilt a little bit in there. And a very important step in cooking is to never forget to season your layers. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt.
And so as we're on looking this, it smells incredible in the kitchen.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So I can now smell the kale, the earthiness of the kale, the garlic, the butternut squash. I'm going to add a little bit of aromatic to my pan. We have some sage here that Triton grows. I'm just going to pick a few leaves.
You see how thin this is? Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
All right, but you gotta get it nice and thin so that you can see through it. If for the people who are doing this with just a rolling pin, it's gonna take a little bit of muscle, but you'll get there. You wanna get it nice and thin and then cut it out. So then the next thing is you wanna make sure you cut it into the sheets of the size that you want for your pasta. So we're gonna go and just start slicing so that we have a tool that we brought back from Italy, right? We have the chitarra. So we're fortunate enough to use that.
Now, what does that mean, Chitara?
Ooh, your guitar. Right, so there's a beautiful thing right here is you have a piece of wood with some guitar strings. It's very simple, but it allows you to make a spaghetti-like guitar, right? So that you can shape it. You want to make sure it has 2 different sides, right? You can buy this. You can order it at Amazon. It's pretty cheap, like 30 bucks. All right, you want to make sure you have something wet underneath, so that way, what we're going to do is run the pasta sheets through it. All right, once you have all your sheets, then you can just start passing them through.
And say the name of this item again.
Chitara.
Yeah.
So it's like, what, your guitar? So you want to get a little bit of flour that was left over. You want to dust the surface. All right, you're gonna get a little dirt, which is fine. All right, so it's there. You're gonna get your sheets. All right, depending on how many sheets you're doing at once, you want to make sure that you're covering them. All right, air and water are going to be your enemy in this. So you want to make sure you get it slightly smaller than the size of the chitara. So then we're gonna apply a little bit of pressure, and then just push down. You know, start to go through the guitar strings. So for the people who want to plan ahead and they just want to freeze this so it's easier later on, I love to do stuff like this because it's heavy prep, but then you can have an easy execution later on, right? You have your pasta, you just pull it out, you dust a little bit of flour, a little bit of semolina, and then you can freeze it like this. And then you start creating your portions. So you want to have your 4 or 5 ounce portion, and then you have that. All you got to do is pull it out, put it in ice water, and you get the other 2 sheets. Right?
Beautiful. I want to show you guys what's going on in my pan quickly. My kale has wilted. The butternut squash is nice and soft. And at this point, I'm ready to add my heavy cream. This is going to be heavy cream reduced with a little bit of Parmesan. What I like about these flavors is they're perfect for Thanksgiving, so you can easily recreate this dish for Thanksgiving. And not too much cream. I think I added about 1.5 cups. And I'm going to let all those flavors come together. And at this point, my pot is ready to receive the pasta. So this fresh pasta is not going to take any longer than 3 minutes at the most to cook. So I have my pot of boiling water ready to go.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. You want to make sure you have that boiling water.
It has to be boiling water. If you don't use boiling water, your pasta sits in very simmering water and just kind of dies and sticks together.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you salt your boiling water, and you want to make sure it tastes like the sea. So 1 handful you might think is enough. Add maybe 1.5 handfuls.
Now, Chef, tell us, this was the same dish that you prepared during the 2018 competition, correct?
No, this dish was actually a version of the one I did. The one that I did had tomatoes and kale, so it still reminded me of the Midwest ingredients that we find here. But I decided to take a little bit of a twist because we're getting closer to Thanksgiving, and all these flavors are right on for Thanksgiving.
Awesome. Now, what goes through your mind as you're preparing these type of things? Like, it's so much going on at the same time, a certain pace that you have. What's going on up there?
During the competition or as we're cooking? Well,
even as you're cooking.
For both. I think my biggest concern, worry, and priority is to make sure that every dish is balanced. So you want to make sure you get sweetness, saltiness, a little bit of earthiness in there. All those things in one dish will really round out somebody's experience.
I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make with pasta too is they just assume that it has to be a heavy heavy cream base, and then it's very overwhelming. It's too rich.
Exactly. So here my cream is reducing. It's looking very good. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my flame. And at this point, you can add Parmesan cheese, Pecorino Romano. I really like the classic Parmesan. It's nutty, a little bit milder than the Pecorino. So I'm going to go ahead and add that now. Here we go. And to my 1.5 cups of cream that I've added, I want to add maybe half a cup to a cup of cheese, depending how cheesy you like it. You have to be prepared because the cheese is going to really make the sauce very, very dense. And the trick that I have to this is you're going to see, once I incorporate it, you have a thick sauce. And you want to kind of get it very thinned out again. And the only way to do that is to use your pasta water. So once my pasta is done cooking, I don't want to throw out all of that pasta water that it's cooking in. You want to reserve a little bit of that liquid. The reason being is because all of this pasta, the flour is going to release starch into the water. It makes it a little bit white in color. That's because it's full of starch. And I want to use that same water to put into my pan. And that water is full of starch, so it's going to help the sauce stick to the pasta.
And then, Chef, we have another question. It says, can you substitute another liquid for the cream, or can it just be omitted?
It can be omitted, but I like the creaminess of this dish. So if you are looking to go a little bit healthier than cream, if you have a dairy allergy or are going vegan, I would recommend to puree chickpeas and use that as your cream. Instead of the actual heavy cream, just add chickpeas to it, puree them up, and use that as your cream. Barilla also carries a beautiful line of gluten-free vegan pastas that I love. I specifically love the chickpea pasta. The red lentils also amazing. So those are alternatives if you're looking to eat in a vegan lifestyle.
Yeah, that tomato sauce.
We have a funnier question here.
Yes.
This says, I don't have a pasta maker. I rolled out my dough. Now what?
So this is exactly what I'm doing. You don't need that many tools. All right, because essentially you could do this if you're out of a rolling pin. Get one of your full glass, your wine bottles. It's gonna be a little bit of work, but I've been doing this for what, 3 minutes? Feels like 10. We're just trying to get it nice and thin. So I take out a little bit of dough. All right, so I've been doing this one by hand, just a rolling pin, turning it over every now and then, so then you have this. All right, so that you should be able to see my hands. I use the back of my hand so that I'm not poking through it. And then what I like to do is, depending on what you're doing, you can just use a knife. You can just start cutting into it. But if you want to get something close to like a fettuccine, I like to just roll it out. I'll cut the ends off because they were a little bit, and then it's just cutting down.
So here I want to show you what action we got going in our pot. My pasta is cooked. It cooked very fast. I drained it out and just added it to my pot, just incorporating all the flavors, being careful not to kind of tear up that pasta. And at this point, I'm going to finish with something a little bit unexpected. I'm using truffle oil. This is specifically white truffle oil. This adds a little bit of boldness, rich umami flavors to your dish. I would invest, it might be a little expensive, but I would invest in a bottle of white truffle oil. It really adds aroma.
They last a while too, so a little bit goes a long way.
A little bit, a few drops maybe.
So this was for the person that's doing this by hand. All right, so rolling pin, and then the knife, just cutting it nice and thin. And then you still get a product that's going to look just like the one that we did out of the tartar. All right, so then this could be your one portion. You already put the pasta in?
I did.
Okay, so then we'll save this for later.
The one thing we all can appreciate about this whole activity is it's a great family activity.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right, like we're trying to cook at home and forget about all the stress that's happening right now and everything else. So you want to make sure you're just, get everyone out of their tablets and do something together.
And what, you know, if you don't have necessarily kale and butternut squash in your pantry or in your refrigerator, you can use whatever you have. You can use spinach, tomatoes. If you're going vegetarian instead of protein, you can use chickpeas or white beans. You know, it just depends on what you have at home and what you really plan for that day.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many things you can actually make when you look at the fridge and then you keep saying you don't have anything in there. There's lots of produce, I'm sure. There's lots of stuff that you can get creative with and, you know, make something out of it. So that way we don't waste food. And that's a problem I feel like a lot of people are doing, is they buy all the ingredients to make that one dish and then they forget about it. And then they order in pizza and then, you know, a week later passes by and then you go in the fridge and then all that stuff just wilted and went bad. So it just goes to waste. So, you know, if you had a day where it kind of forces you to utilize what you have, you'd be surprised how creative you can get.
So I'm plating up my pasta now. I always use a family-sized bowl so that everybody can kind of serve themselves out of. You know, if you're on the go and you don't have that much time, is just putting out a bowl like this, having everybody serve themselves saves a lot of time. I'm going to garnish this with a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top and some toasted pine nuts that really add crunch and a little bit of extra nuttiness to the dish. And there you have it. Very easy, very simple, didn't take us long. And it's something you can put out for Thanksgiving, something you can put out on your dinner table tonight.
Yeah, it smells delicious.
It smells delicious.
I think maybe it's time we try.
Yeah. Any questions? Is anyone actually making this at the same time?
So right now it says that it's, the comments we're receiving is that looks delicious.
Oh, thank you guys. You always want to make sure you taste in between
Delicious.
for saltiness, if you need more salt, less salt
Nice glass of white wine.
of
What
the
else
wine.
do you need?
And so you're getting a lot of comments saying, can we get that recipe? That looks delicious. Thank you for sharing how you make. This is
one
a
of those-
veggie dish, a vegan dish is what they mentioned.
Definitely. I think we can go back and add some of the recipes.
We can definitely add the recipes, but the whole intention was to kind of force you to get creative with what it is that you have and using that recipe builder, using the fresh pasta as a vessel, because then we went to our walk-in cooler and we just found little things that we had and then we could have changed the recipe completely, right? The same pasta shape, but we could have done it with bacon or we could have done it with artichokes or whatever.
Exactly.
You know, we had some chickpeas soaking, so we had those soaking the day before. We could have cooked it almost like a really creamy hummus, and that would have acted like the sauce instead of having your cream. So
It's just about getting creative, and some of your creativity comes when you're in a pinch. So you're like, how creative can I get when I have no time? So this
Be
is
a
a perfect
challenge.
way to test yourselves. Yep.
Awesome. I have another question from Allie Meyer. It's more with your competition. How did you win?
Hi, Allie. Well, we did a round in the USA where we competed against chefs from all over the US, different states from coast to coast. We represented the Midwest. Chef Manny was actually in the competition with me and allowed us to win that competition in advance to the World Championship. But we won with the squid ink, spaghetti, and raw tuna dish. So that's a very classic dish that I serve at the restaurant. We've made plenty of times.
yeah, delicious.
We won with that dish, and we competed in one of the rounds in Milan with that dish. But it was very nerve-wracking. It definitely was our chance to showcase what America can do with pasta, and I think we did exactly that.
Amazing. Your you all's teamwork in the kitchen was inspirational tonight. You had a lot of young chefs that were joining us online. Those who are interested in going in the hospitality industry, what kind of things would you advise them to be focusing on during this time in their life?
What? Start cooking.
Yeah.
Start cooking.
You know, start cooking. If you have the opportunity, we have so many classes that are offered here. not just in cooking. We have baking. We also have a great horticulture program, so we work well with them because a lot of our produce does end up coming from them. And you'd be surprised how many people don't even realize where herbs come from or what seed and how everything is grown and stuff that they can keep doing at home. And for the people that have tier 1, horticulture program was gracious enough to donate little pots, right? So you have like a windowsill, and then you can have your basil growing. So that way you're using fresh ingredients as much as possible. Just kind of stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and try.
Taste everything.
Anything that pops into your head, try it. You'll never know what it's like, what it tastes like, what it looks like if you don't try.
So Allie continues and mentions that she's in the first grade, and she says, do you have any classes for kids?
We have a great summer program. So that was this summer.
Awesome.
We hosted a summer kids camp. I believe there were 7 to 13 years old. So we had 13 of them. And
So cool.
I gotta say, they have so much energy. I don't know how they do it. It definitely was one of the harder classes, but it was great to see them making everything from beginning to end. So
Allie, hopefully we see you at the next class that opens up.
Next summer, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, I mean, these are the questions that we've had. You've gotten a lot of accolades. Everybody's saying thank you so much for what you've done. It was so much fun, those who joined and cooked at home with us.
Yeah,
And
send
so-
pictures.
Yeah, it says,
send
so
pictures.
that's your challenge, to send these pictures.
Yeah, final product to see.
I gotta say, it's very rewarding to be able to put a meal out for your family that didn't take you a long time, and only you know that. But to put a meal out and to know that you didn't have to order out, that you didn't have to, feed them something that you weren't necessarily proud of. This was very easy. It's something you can be proud of and know that what you're feeding them is healthy.
Awesome. So if you're posting pictures with us online, do a hashtag TriIt, so that we can keep track of those that are posting.
Oh, yeah.
No, we'll
And
keep it
so
going,
do
yeah.
those photos, hit up Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social media websites, because we would love to see what your experience looked like at home.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
So it was an incredible time tonight, as you all can see, with the world renowned chefs and the team here. Everything in this kitchen smelled good, and the moment they turned the camera off, I'm sure that I'm going to try to eat the food. I'm a professional eater, not a professional chef, so I'm looking forward to that. But if there aren't any more questions, we want to thank everyone for participating tonight. Wait, we do have one question right before we go, because I want to get this one. They say, do you make a different type of pasta for ravioli?
So the dough can change depending on what you have. You can simply take flour and incorporate some eggs. You can take just a semolina, incorporate water, and you'll still get a dough. The consistency might be slightly different. It's just you don't want to get it too thin, because you have the inside layer, then it might spill over. You can use the same dough. This is a universal one, so it'd be great. Yeah. And then you can modify it as you go. You'll start to see, different things that you add to it. Just get creative. Don't be set to just a recipe.
Have a follow-up question. There was one that says, how long do you cook the pasta for? I'm sure you said it already, but they might have missed it, just in case.
Just for 3 minutes. Anything more than that, your pasta will start to fall apart and kind of lose its integrity. So 3 minutes is perfect.
So if it's at a boiling, if it's rapidly boiling, you want to make sure that it'll start to rise, so they'll see it.
Yep.
Versus like your dry pasta is going to take 3 to 4 times longer, but
You want to make sure that the pasta still has a bite. If it's too limp or too soft, one, it won't taste as good. And second, pasta that's been cooked al dente actually helps with satiety, and it helps with digestion. So it kind of does its purpose in, helping you digest al dente pasta.
Awesome. Now, individuals that's thinking about going into taking classes in the hospitality program, what's your message to them?
sign up now.
Do it.
And don't wait until the end,
Yep.
right? Like, I guess what we're trying to figure out is how we're going to adapt it during the times that we're in right now, and get, stay busy, and hopefully it starts something different and might push you into a different career, or it might just be something that you get really good at home, right? So.
But this is a perfect time to start. We have time. There's space in the classes. And the situation that we're living in isn't going to last forever. The world will return into a hospitality-focused country, so there'll be jobs and spaces available.
And we're always going to eat.
Yeah.
Right? We're always going to eat. So that helps.
I have one question, and there's a few congratulations to you all.
Thank you.
It says, what's the difference between all-purpose flour and the other one that you mentioned?
So all-purpose flour is great. You can definitely use that for a majority of the recipes. So it's the protein level, right? So it's as you start to roll it out, how much it's going to fight back. But I've done the exact same recipe with AP flour when I don't have the luxury of getting the doppio flour. So you won't really see the difference. It just, when we're doing it at a restaurant, right, there's more standards, there's more, you want to keep everything consistent, so.
Awesome. Well, that's great. You got a congratulations to the Alumni Association from President Mary Rita Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course,
thank you.
so all of this is
lot of people
everyone
put a lot
sending
of
those
work into
comments
this,
through,
yeah.
and so it's an incredible time. So thank you for sharing your gift with us.
Oh, thank you guys
Thank
for
you.
joining us. This was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Awesome. So that's our time, and so thank you all so much for joining us. And we will be back with another edition. Of course, you'll have with the Alumni Association, so stay tuned for more. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.